Okay, we're going to have a look at a meeting from this week in the benchmark handicap course. This is a meeting run at Doomben on the 14th Wednesday of August. No particular reason looking at this meeting except there was one reasonable benchmark result for this meeting, so we'll consider that race in some depth. So going through at Doomben, every meeting on this day had the rail out. Doomben this day, the rail's at 11 metres, which is far from ideal. However, we're just looking at this as an example. You can of course bet on race meetings where the rail's out, especially when there's no other option, or obviously you can pass for the day. But let's go through this one quickly. Looking at the benchmark figures, here's the figure of interest, the benchmark weight change. So these are all up in weight moving from maiden events. Okay, so in other words, the one that's up the most is the worst. So if we sort them worst to best, Sugar Zone is in fact on top, and that in fact won the race. Alright, so we can mark that down as a winner, but again, I wouldn't be looking at this race as being necessarily of any value. Did pick the winner, I suppose. Looking at the next race, we sort it again by benchmark weight change figures. My Song at the bottom of the weights is down 5 benchmark points, which is 2.5 kilograms. The spread of the weights is really what you also want to be looking at, or the spread of the changes. -5 to 1 means there's 6 benchmark point differences between the top and the bottom, which is basically just 3 kilograms. Really not enough for you to be saying that you're going to get any huge value out of backing a particular horse, and in this case it's only this My Song which is down 5, which may or may not fire without looking at its form any further. Moving on to race 3. In this one, again, we sort according to the benchmark figures, top to bottom. So in this case, we've got a spread of 10 points, -3 to 7. So you'd have to be saying that these ones down near the bottom would be not so well handicapped. As it is, Love Disc end up winning the race. Chances are it was just too good, and again it's a maiden. So again, horses moving through maidens, you can have basically a champion running in the race, or you can have a complete dud without any further knowledge on Love Disc. Could be a reasonable horse. Moving on to race 4. Same thing, we'll spread the weights looking at it. So we've got this Dream Piece -6, and we're going up to 4. So again, there's a 10 benchmark spread. Again, it's another maiden, so it's probably not the race to be looking at in terms of benchmark figures. Basically all the benchmark figures are 0 except in Western Australia, so we're really just looking at some variation in handicap weights. Great Keppel was there, which really doesn't mean anything. Race 5. In this one, we sort it according to the benchmark figures. We have this Dream Timer at the bottom, a -8. And then we got this Wowzer that's stepping up, must be from a maiden. So that's really irrelevant. This number here really doesn't mean anything. So you've got from -8 to 6. So a sort of 14 benchmark point spread. So this is at least getting to give you a bit of a spread of the weights. So Dream Timer was first up. A lot of horses when they're first up drop in the weights because they usually taper off their form, although this one's got pretty good form. You end up running 4th in the end, so that could have been some value if we were taking multiples. Frangipani Moon, it's the second top rated. That's end up winning at $16. So there's a bit of a result there. So that's one. We move on to the next one. And this one, sorting from top to bottom, Publishing Powers on top at a -16, along with Tail Event, all the way up to a 9. So in other words, here we've got 25 benchmark points variation. So without knowing anything about Get Out of Utah, it's 25 benchmark points worse off than these two. You really would be hard pressed to be backing that horse. He is the only one that's got a high value though, so the next one down is only 1, so it's probably only a 17 benchmark point spread. But either way, these two horses are way down compared with their last start in terms of their benchmark figures, and Publishing Power end up winning and Tail Event end up running third, so they've both run well. So let's have a quick look at Publishing Power. So having a look at the figures, he's gone from an 83 last time, this figure. He's running in a 1,000 metre open handicap at Sunshine Coast. He had 57.5 kilos. So he's dropped down to 53, so he's down 4.5 kilos. And he's dropped down from 83 down to 76. So he's down 7 points there as well. So that makes up the 16 points. Now the question here for this horse is 115 days since his last run. We can have a look if he's got any trials. No trials and no published trials. The question then is whether he's going to fire or not first up. This is really what it's all about. And if we look at his form, he's got 5 first up runs according to the stats for a win, 2 seconds and a third. So in other words, he's got 4 out of 5 runs first up. So in other words, you could be saying he's going to fire quite well first up. And if you look at second up, he's got 4 out of 5 second up. So in other words, he has strong credentials for doing well in this race. To add that on top, he's also the second top pick in the market, and the one that ran third is the top pick. So in other words, there's a fairly strong pointer to these horses running well. It wouldn't be too difficult to throw in these other two to get the trifecta, which was only 140, but that's better than nothing. So there's another race that was useful there. Moving on to race 7. Short price favourite. Looking at the benchmark figures, it's basically on 0. It's another one that's first up. 9 benchmark points spread. You would have to wonder about that race. Clearly this Constant Flight is clearly superior to these horses. But yeah, not much you can do in this race except whatever you're going to bet on, well, you probably would have lost on. You could have possibly taken Connoisseur for the place. And moving on to race 8. This is another example of a race where the horse was clearly superior. First up, he's up 6 benchmark points and he's won. So these last 2 horses could be the other thing. You can use the figures as a pointer to the horse improving. So this one's not so much up at the weight, so it's hard to say with this one. But this last one, who's clearly up at the weights and first up, may prove to be a useful horse to follow. So you might like to write that horse down, see how he goes at his next few starts. So anyway, there you go. There's a few examples of using the benchmark figures, and that gives you a little bit of insight into just simply using those figures without any further consideration of anything. As it was at this meeting, it had 2 long shot winners. If you count the first winner, 3 winners. Now again, the races to focus on looking are not the top line meetings in Sydney, for example, because there you can have horses that just simply improve 3 or 4 lengths every start, especially when they step up in distance. So the benchmark figures are not really going to be a huge assistance there. However, sometimes when the track is rain affected, it can give you an advantage. But yeah, if you're looking to bet on Sydney metro races, the benchmark figures are only going to be of limited value. So anyway, that's about it for this video.